Welcome to the Honest Business Podcast. This is the show for ambitious, value-driven business owners who are actively building a business that works for them. Hi, I'm May James, and I'm here to make scaling your business easier and more rewarding than ever. Each week, we will dive into simple, sustainable strategy and pragmatic leadership discussion to support you as you take imperfect action on your entrepreneurial journey. If you want to stay ahead, exceed your growth goals, and have a purposeful, thriving business, then keep on listening. Welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. My name is May James and I'm your host. So today we're going to jump into how to enjoy the journey when you're building a business, when you want to be further ahead than you are, and how you manage slow growth. This is something that comes up so many times, and I think again it's something that people kind of talk about, but then they don't really. They kind of glamorize it and brush things kind of in the space of it, but they don't really actually tackle it head on. So I'm here today to tackle it head on for you. And as always, we'll be giving you a kind of really practical walkthrough of things that you can be looking at and things that you can be doing. But first of all, just wanted to talk about the fact that, there's two questions here. So when you want to be further ahead than you are, that's a total normal feeling. It's kind of part of human nature and human psychology of that we're always looking for something else. We're always looking for the next thing. We're always comparing. We're always seeing where someone else is in relation to us. We're always wanting to benchmark things. So that for me is something to just say to you, like, it's somewhat normal. The other part of that is slow growth. So a lot of the time we still are growing, and we're still making moves and we're still doing things. It just might not be at the speed in which you think you wish to be at. So we're going to talk about that today. And then there's also a part of this where it's about enjoyment and how do we enjoy it? Because some people, want to be further ahead than they are, and they can accept that they're not, but then they can't actually enjoy it and allow themselves to enjoy it. And so that is something we can also discuss, because I think those are all different areas of this discussion. And the first thing to talk about here is managing emotions. So when you are wanting to be further ahead than you are, often frustration comes up a lot. And so it's about how do we manage emotion and how do we get really clear on why do we feel a certain way. The first thing is really important is to understand how do we feel, which can be really difficult, okay? Like I've done a lot of work around and still do work around how do I actually feel? Like, how do I know what I feel? I know that seems so basic, but as adults, we really struggle to articulate that. And there's a great emotions wheel that I like to use, which has all of the different emotions and they're categorized and split off into different things. And it can really help you to identify how you're feeling. And I actually use it in other areas of my life. If someone's struggling in my life to say, like, family or friends, they might be like, I don't actually know what I'm trying to say something, but I don't know what I'm saying. If you get that, you can get it up on your phone, or I actually have a printout of it, and it helps people identify how you're feeling. And once you understand what you're actually feeling, that then makes it a lot easier to try and manage. But often we just say, I'm frustrated, or I feel crap, or I'm unhappy. And that's not really often the actual emotion. There's something else behind that. And when we start to go on a journey together of self-discovery and understanding how we feel, that really allows us to step into a better version of ourselves and a way that we can access a different level of emotional intelligence for ourselves and for others, and to be able to come at situations from a level-headedness and an objectiveness that maybe we can't currently do. So that's one thing to think about. And I think managing emotions sounds simple, and in reality it can be very hard. But I think really getting clear on how do you feel and what is it? What's causing that? What's the trigger for that? What is it that is physically putting you into that emotional state? And then also thinking about state management. So what I mean by that is when you feel an emotion, there's a plethora and a kind of like a valley of different intensities of said emotion. And so if you can identify where you are in that state, are you in the worst bit of it, the not so bad bit, the bit where you're kind of teetering on it, then how do you get yourself out of that point, and how can you shift things? And that is something that you learn, and I argue is very much part of your leadership, because that is how you grow. And then, part of your job eventually becomes helping other people do that. But for now, let's focus on you. And this is a part of, your leadership and your business growth that, again, you might be making multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, more. You might, have made any money yet in your business and you're listening to this. But for most entrepreneurs I meet with, this is something we have to get into the weeds with at some point if we're working together for a long period of time, because this does come up. And so the money can sometimes and often is irrelevant, because it's about your level of leadership and it's about where your leadership is at a given point. So it's never an end journey, but it's definitely something to delve further into and kind of just touching the surface on it here in this episode. Jealousy and competition is another one to think about here. So when we are feeling like we want to be further ahead and we're not, that is something that often comes down to feeling like we're on this speed journey of competition and got to get somewhere and got to get there really fast and got to make all the money and the money's going to run out and the client's going to go yada yada yada. That's not true. And we know that's not true, and you probably know on a conscious level it's not true, but in our subconscious we don't know that, because our mind plays tricks on us and we are constantly searching for validation, for new things, for more exciting things, for better things than the next person next to us. And so that can really grate on you. And jealousy is an emotion that's really hard often for people to come to terms with, to accept, to allow themselves to admit that they feel, because they feel bad and they feel like they're immature, or they feel like it's too much of a silly emotion. And that's not the case at all. Like, jealousy is such a normal emotion and so kind of common, and it gets identified wrongly a lot of the time. And I think people can pretend that they're not feeling jealous even if they are. And so I think it's really important that we accept when we feel jealous, accept the feeling, accept that something inside of me has really felt weird there when I've just seen this person do this, or LinkedIn's telling me that someone's done this thing, and now all of a sudden I feel like my nervous system's now activated and I kind of feel a bit strange. Some of you, that will manifest in doing more work. So some people, if you've scrolled and saw someone celebrating something amazing, you might be at the point where you can celebrate that with them and for them, but then you still feel this lack and this oh God, that's right, okay, they've done that and I haven't done that, so let's go. And then some people, that manifests as working harder and just going at it and just bang, 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 going for it. Other people, you can really paralyze you. For some people, if you see that and you get jealous, some people will not be able to do anything. And so the procrastination kicks in, and this whole cycle of taking action, not seeing a result, then feeling like you can't do it, then ended up in a really crap place, and you end up in this cycle that completely reverberates around you. That's a big word for me. If you don't know and you listen to this, I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic, and often say the wrong words for things. So please give me a bit of slack if you're like, what? That word does not make sense in that sentence. So yeah, I think really get clear with yourself, if you can, on what does jealousy mean to you right now. And that will change as your business grows and as you develop. But what does it mean for you right now? And maybe, if you can, what did it mean for you last year? Think about last year in your business and what did that mean for you? Has it changed? Because I think as we believe that competition exists and we play that game of feeling like it's right, this person's doing that, it will eat you up and it will really eat you alive. And I've seen businesses completely collapse under people who are running them be so consumed by what other people are doing and what other people's competition is and what they're doing. And it's so sad because, competition's real and we want competition to be there. It forces us to be better people. It forces us to do more in the world. It's very good, I'd argue. But it comes at the cost of, what does your leadership skills allow you to manage? What is your emotional intelligence? Where's that at? Does that need work? The answer is probably yes. Is your emotional regulation in a position where it can handle this sort of stuff? And if it isn't, that's okay. You're not a bad person. You're not a bad business owner. You're not a bad leader. This is just me having a really frank, open conversation with you. And I come on these episodes and I give you a full kind of conversation as if you're a paying client and we are having this conversation, because the reality of it is that most of these conversations that we have on this podcast are conversations that come up at least once, if not many, many times. And so just because we can't see each other and we're not having a backwards and forth, know that this is okay. What I'm saying to you is people struggle with this. People who are doing really well, people you look up to, people who are not as far on as you, everyone struggles with this stuff. And so thinking about, right, what is this competition What is it doing to me? Is it helpful? Is it not? The other good question for you is, when you see other people, and there might not even be direct competitors, it might just be other people in your space, it might be your coach, it might be people that you started the business with at the same time, it might be people you used to work with, like whatever. How do you feel when they launch something new? How do you feel when they bring something out? How do you feel when they've got another business going or they've got something else? Do you feel attacked? Do you feel like, oh my God, can they not just slow down so I can catch up with them? That's a great indicator that there's something there that you need to look into. And as I mentioned before, this is normal. It's not that you're some jealous lunatic who's like going around and wishing bad on people. That's not what it is. It's just we all feel things, and building a business is one of the most emotional, challenging, testing things you're going to do. And so therefore emotion plays a huge part of it. And this is why mindset, and I find that word very bizarre sometimes these days because it's been really transformed into something else. But my idea of, you do have to work on your mindset. But for me, it's not really about mindset. It's more working on your state, your emotional intelligence, your leadership. All of that really comes into play. And it's the stuff that makes a huge difference in your business. So that is kind of a thing to think about. And when we look at how do you enjoy the journey, the enjoyment is going to come from you managing the emotion and you being really clear in being able to look at things objectively and look at things from afar and be happy for someone else without that triggering you and without that going on like a whole journey. Another great example, just to kind of wrap this up, is if you follow someone on social media and you constantly watch their things or constantly look at what they're doing or constantly waiting for the next update, the next thing, you can be inadvertently really kind of dangerously attached to them. And that can be quite negative. And why that sounds extreme, but I'm just going to say, being honest with you, that I see that an awful lot. And the other thing I will go into here, which is maybe a whole conversation, is some people's business models, how do I say this without getting into too much trouble? I wish you could see me now. Some people's business models are built or are being built, and their marketing strategies have changed in the last, let's say, 10 months to lean into this. And it's always been there, but in the last 10 months, it's become a lot more intensified to the point of some people use this way that they know business owners feel and they are managing it how they aren't able to manage their emotion, and then use it with various techniques and strategies to instill certain beliefs into you without you even knowing, and then going on to purchase various courses, programs, things from them. That is a very interesting situation that is going on. It is going on around the world. And some of the behaviour is kind of terrifying to me. And, people don't know. And the reason I'm saying this is because people don't know this is going on. When you're inside of this, you don't know. It's almost like you're being conditioned. I'd argue some of it is radicalisation, but that might be classed as being a bit too extreme. But there is huge, huge issues, in my opinion, with that. And essentially, people can make a hell of a lot of money. And when I'm talking about a hell of a lot of money, I'm talking like people are making millions, multiple millions, tens of millions from this kind of play because they know, right? You're listening to this episode, you want to be further ahead than you are. Everyone does. I do. Everyone does. Like, of course we do. And so some people choose to use that and manipulate people in the most tiniest subtle ways. I'm not saying this is not a mass project. This isn't like under the surface. This is like very public and very clear. It's just dependent on your knowledge of this kind of stuff and dependent on your emotional intelligence, analytical skills will dictate whether or not you kind of view it as that and whether or not you see it as that. Anyway, that is a tangent, and as I said, that's probably a whole other episode because, there's some bizarre things going on. But needless to say, trying to get in touch with yourself and understanding how you feel will really help this whole thing going forward. And then in terms of how you enjoyed the journey, you have to get a handle on the jealousy and the competition and the frustration and this like constantly not feeling good enough situation. From a more practical perspective, when you want to be further ahead than you are, or maybe you've got slow growth, the thing I always come back to is, what is your business ready for? Really important question, this one. Like, really important, because I think often we feel like we're ready for something, but our business isn't. And that's totally okay. So there's two parts. Well, there's three parts. You have to be ready as the leader, as the business owner, as the CEO for the thing you want. So the thing you're calling in, the goal, the intentions, whatever it is you want to achieve, you have to be in a physical place, space, feeling for that, to receive it, to make it happen, to enjoy it, to sit in it, to actually celebrate it, to deliver it, yeah? So that's one thing. Then you have the business itself has to be ready for it, which means, is it structurally there? Does it make sense? Can it hold what you want it to do? Does it physically have all the things it needs? Does it, on an energetic level, understand what you're asking for it to do? And that is like a whole thing itself. Then the third thing is, there needs to be a synergy there. And then the two have to connect together and work together in order for that all to come together. And the third piece can be challenging because a lot of that's intangible. And so it is a lot of kind of positioning and understanding where you're at. But also, all three of them individually are hard, right? Because you as an individual is what we've spoken about before, and we can continue to speak about together today. And that's really important. But then this idea of the business being ready is really key. And I'm going to be honest, most people's businesses aren't ready for what they want to do. I'm just flat out going to say it. They're not. And that doesn't mean you won't do it and you can't do it, because you definitely can do it. And, I help people who have done it under like really raw, bootstrapped, next to nothing on the ground situations and have created huge success. And then we backtrack and we go through and completely refresh and make sure that things are where they want them to be. So this is not a case of you have to make your business ready before you do anything. Not at all. I love scrappy. I love just going out and doing it. I love imperfection. Like, that is part of business. But what I am saying is, if you're not where you want to be, or you're finding like this is very slow growth, or it's very tedious, go back to your business. What is your business ready for? If you feel like, yes, I'm ready for it, I've done the work, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, what is the business ready for? What have you put in place to allow for this to happen? And this is where it gets really tricky, right? Because most of the people that you probably follow and you look up to are building based on demand and on building based on what they've achieved, and then they fulfill from that direction. And most people who will help you grow business, especially an online business, will tell you to do that. So most people will say, sell all your spots and then work out how you're going to deliver, and that kind of vibe. And that for me just is not the vibe that I choose to go down, and there's nothing against that. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying I have found that it's, if you can build a business where you've got all the things in place ready for whatever you want to happen, it helps you from the number one section that I was just talking about of you, helps that part come together much easier. And then it allows for the third bit of the synergy bit to all come together much more effectively and much more kind of intuitively. So that's just a suggestion to you to think about, what is your business ready for? Because it might not be ready. Your systems might not be in place to actually deal with. You might have a goal that you want 1,000 people in a membership, but your systems is only set up to have 100 people in. Well, then it's not going to work, right? Think about what physically in your business space is your business able to do. It might be that you want to run an event for 50 business owners, but you don't know where you're going to hold it, you don't know how it's going to work, you don't have a date in the diary. Like, that's never going to happen. But again, a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to go and investigate until I have 50 people who want to join us, who want to buy in. Well, they're not going to buy in if it's not clear, right? So you have to, all of this stuff's really important, that you get clear in your head of like, right, what is it that I actually want? And then what is the business prepared and set up for? And if a random person came into my business, would they be able to say, oh yeah, she's ready to do that because there's all the stuff in the business makes sense to be? I would argue no, most people aren't. And again, please don't mistake what I'm saying for perfectionism and for being overly prepared. I'm not saying you have to build every single thing out in your business before you do anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is, if you're in a space of having the joy of time because you aren't booked out and you haven't got like millions and millions of things going on, use the time wisely. Don't just like sit there and be miserable about it. Use it to your advantage. And we're going to come back to that, further down further down into the podcast. Thank you for listening so far. I think we're 20 minutes in. I feel like we've only just got started. This is going to be a juicy episode, I think. It's funny, isn't it? The ones there, I thought this was going to be a quick 10, 15, 20 minute episode, and then it's evidently not, because we're already 20 minutes in. So this is leading on from that. The next thing to think about for you is, right, managing slow growth. How do you manage this idea of growing slow or not being where you want to be? One thing I would say is use the time effectively, which is what I mentioned before. But in doing so, develop your skill set. What is it that you're selling? What is it that you do? Are you an expert in it? This is something that I don't think people spend enough time on. And this is something that when I am purchasing from people, but bearing in mind, I like purchasing people. I like spending money. I like supporting other people. You know, I love getting support in my life and in my business. When I'm doing that, I'm looking at skill level. So, and I'm not saying everyone looks at this, they don't. But for me, it's like, what is your skill set? What is your skill level? Where are you at? What game are you playing in? And when I see people who are like, I've scaled to, 250 grand in 12 months. I've scaled to £1 million in 18 months, right? I think, great, well done, really happy for you. Because I genuinely am. I just think it's good. I know it might not sound like on here. It's because I'm just so I just sound so miserable, don't I? But no, I'm genuinely buzzing for them. It's great. It's so good. I love other people winning. However, that doesn't say much to me and actually worries me a lot of the time because I'm like, okay, cool. What's the skill set level? Where are you operating on? How's this happening? Because the reality of it is, and I'm just going to say it as it is, most of that comes down to marketing. You can go and make a hell of a lot of money, whether you've just started and you go and make it in your 12 months, whether you go and do it after you're 25 and you just go on a massive marketing campaign and you can make shitload of money. So for me, it's like, I couldn't give a crap, to be quite honest, how much money someone's made. I actually find it really weird, and I know people really don't dislike when I say this, but I find it weird when people have on their bios and various social medias, and it's like, I've made this amount of money in X amount of time. I'm like, why are you sharing this? Do we need to know this? I'm not sure we do. And again, people, you can disagree with me on that. That's fine. If you have that in your bio, great, cool. That's totally up to you. And it depends on, again, this comes down to, it depends on the person that's buying from you, right? Because some people opt into this culture and they're opting into it because it works. And so it helps make them more and more money. So, if you're someone who does this, I understand, that's fine. If that's where you kind of play ball in. My clients, I don't, because for me, my clients would just find it a bit bizarre. They'd be like, what? A lot of them would be like, okay, great. And don't get me wrong, yeah, that means my business grows slower, but I couldn't give a shit. That's good. I'm not interested. It fascinates me and baffles me. So when you are, when people are saying these claims of I've done this, I've done that, for me, I'm just like, right, okay, great. You're really good at marketing and sales, and that's fantastic. Love it. You've also got the people who then choose to put how much in client revenue that they've helped generate, which I'm using in air quotes because that's a whole subjective situation as well. So, and again, if you use that in your bio, that is fine. I'm just saying that if you want to access a certain level of entrepreneur in certain industries outside of the online space, then I think you need to have a think, because it might not be the best option for you. And it might be, and it probably serves you great, so that's fine. But think about, what does it mean? Because if someone, and this is what I'm saying to you, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm saying this to you and explaining this because I think it's important for people to understand, our nervous systems get activated when we see this money. It's like, oh my God, £3 million created in client revenue in 2021 or something, right? Or 2022 even. And we're like, whoa, this is amazing, this is great. But we don't know what these businesses are coming at, right? Some of the businesses come and work with me, they're already making shitloads of money. So what, I'm just going to put in there oh, I've helped them do X, Y, and Z? No. They're 25 years before that, or they're 5 years before that, or they're 10 years of past experience before they started a business is what's making that money. It's not them as a business owner. I mean, we could talk on this subject for hours, and I'm not going to go there because I know that this triggers so many people. But all I'm saying is that figure, when people are putting that in places for you to read, It is intriguing. It's exciting. It's fun. It activates our nervous system and it makes us think, yeah, let's go. Love it. Gonna work with them. They know what they're talking about. Yada, yada, yada. And I'm not saying that these people who have that in there aren't. But what I'm saying to you is that when you read that, that probably really gets on your nerve. Like it gets in you and it gets in your body and it makes you feel like, I'm growing so slow. What am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting there? What's going on? I want to be there. And that's okay. You're allowed to feel like that. And it's not it's not their fault that the fact, they can put what they want in their bio. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't be allowed to put that in their bios because they can put whatever the hell they want. But what I am saying is be objective, use your emotional intelligence and be really strategic in that when you're reading that and say, what is that telling me? Because a lot of the time it's not telling us very much. So coming back to my point around developing your skill set, I look at skill set and I want to know what are people doing? Like where's the skills at? That's ultimately what it comes down to, especially if we're buying services, right? What's the skill set? That doesn't mean, when I say that, by the way, that doesn't mean you have to be the best expert in the world. It's not about amount of time you spend doing something. It's not about where you're at and who you work with. What it means is on you, on an individual level, do you understand people? Do you understand what you do? Do you understand your industry? Do you understand the industry that I am in? Whoever the potential customer is. That is the stuff that's really important to me when I'm looking at engaging with someone to work with them, because I want to understand that they understand how I live my life and how I choose to go about things. And again, I'm not saying that other people don't get that who choose to do whatever marketing works for them. I'm just saying really think about skill set. And so you have a great opportunity to develop your skill set. And so while we're here, let's talk about working hard, because I think when we have this conversation, a lot of this comes round to enjoying the journey and being further ahead. And when that comes up, some people will be inclined to just go for it and work really hard. It tends to go one way or the other. Some people work really, really hard and then kind of burn themselves into the ground. The other group of people can then just be paralyzed and not really do much because you just feel so overwhelmed by all the things that are going on. Some people kind of will go in cycles, so you might be really focused for 4 weeks and then you'll have 6 weeks where you're completely off the rails of not being focused at all, and then you get on it for six weeks and then maybe you're off for 4 weeks, and that can be a trend. And again, none of those that I've just explained might fit for you, and that's okay. But in that, we kind of get a bit lost, we can get a bit confused. But one thing I like to come back to is, there's a saying about, doing your 10,000 hours to become an expert in a specific area, or, getting your 10,000 hours in, and that is one indicator. It's a potential indicator of expertise and, being really great at something. Now, obviously, there's many flaws with that because it depends, right, doesn't it? It depends, are you even doing a good job for one of the hours that you're going to duplicate for 10,000, yada, yada, yada. Take it with a pinch of salt. However, I do think it holds a lot of substance, and I do think it has something in it, in that saying. And there's not many sayings I say that for. And I just wanted to come on here and break that down for you, because I think this really shows you why sometimes some people will choose to work hard. I'm saying work hard kind of with air quotes here, in terms of putting a lot of hours in. Because there is an element that ultimately comes down to, you have to just sit and graft, and you have to put the hours in. And so if you're experiencing slow growth, there's no reason why you can't spend the extra time you have developing your skill set, developing your craft, and understanding and becoming an expert in it. So let's just break this down. 10,000 hours, right? If you are going, say you work 40 hours a week, 48 weeks of the year, say you take a month off, 2 weeks of Christmas, 2 weeks of summer, I don't know, that's just an idea, right? That will take you over 5 years. It's about 5.2 years to get your 10,000 hours in, okay? So that's fine. If you do 20 hours, it's about 10 and a half years. 10 and a half years of doing whatever you do for 20 hours a week. 10 and a half years. That's a lot of time, yeah? Then, say let's just do 10 hours a week. Because, a lot of people, if you're building your business, or even, you full-time your business, might be like, right, let's do 10 hours a week. That's going to take you 21 years. 21 years of doing 10 hours a week for 48 weeks a year. to get to your 10,000 hours? Like, let's just think about that, right? Yeah, 21 years. If you do 50 hours a week, which can I just say, I'm not suggesting you do, but I'm just using it as an example to show you. If you do 50 hours a week for 48 weeks of the year, you're going to reach your 10,000 hours in 4 years. 4 damn years. That is pretty short, right? And the reason I'm sharing this with you is not to say to you all, let's go and do 50 hours for 4 years and become experts. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you should understand that 10,000 hours is a long time, right? So it's a hell of a long time. And so when people are saying to you, like, oh, I've done this in 12 months, and oh, I've done this, and this is amazing, and yada, yada, I just turn around and I just think, great, I'm really happy for you. That is amazing. But I also want to know more than that. I want to know, what are you actually doing? How do you help people? What are you actually, what are you actually an expert in? Because I help people grow their businesses, but I'm not an expert in many things. Facebook ads, not an expert. I can give people, have a conversation with them about it. I wouldn't write them a whole strategy because that's not my area of expertise. So I just don't go there, right? And there's a difference between having conversations and strategizing and talking about things and having a basic understanding. Like, I have quite a basic, decent knowledge of it, but I'd never write a strategy for it. At this current recording of August in 2022, I mean, it might change, years gone by, but that's just not my area. And that's okay, because I can be very vocal about it, and I just say, and, I can give people referrals to whoever needs to help them. But think about this idea of, like, right, 10,000 hours. It's pretty much physically impossible for someone to do that in a year. So, like, don't get sucked into that. I just don't think it needs to be there. And then for you as an individual, think about, like, okay, well, 40 hours a week, that's a hell of a lot of work. And you'll get there in 5 years. It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot of time. 20 hours a week is probably more reasonable for a lot of people. That's 10.5 years. Now, 10.5 years of you putting the graft in and actually learning your craft and doing what you do, I think this is where it's interesting. What you're doing now, would you do that for the next 10 years? For the next 10.5 years, would you keep on going? Do you love what you do? Do you believe in what you do so much that you would do that before you got expert status? That's an interesting conversation and a question to kind of think about, yeah? Because that's what it comes down to, of enjoyment, enjoying the journey. I love the journey of building businesses. I adore it. I find it fun. I think it's exciting. But that has only happened from me really allowing and leaning into and just accepting that this is a friggin' journey. And it's hard sometimes and it's easier some days, but it is a journey. And it takes time. And you are not going to get there overnight. And it is not about being this perfect person anyway, but you're never going to be perfect. So, like, for me, I just opted for the idea of, like, well, say if you do 10 hours a week, it's going to take you 21 years. Do you believe in what you do so much to do it for 21 years? My answer is yes, because I love what I do, and I believe so strongly in it. And that, for me, is where there's a huge, like, expansive opportunity there for you to just think about, like, whoa, yeah, like, why don't I think of it like that? And as I mentioned, that's not to say that you can't make any money until your 21 years is up. You can't go and do all these amazing things. That's not at all. From year one, I want you to be part of the crew that says, I did this amount of money in X amount of time. Because the reality of it is I can say that, and many people can say that, it's just they choose not to. And if you choose to, that's completely fine. But what I am saying is that there's a lot of people who want expertise and they want people who know what the hell they're talking about. And that doesn't have to be on a shiny market and random credibility statement. That can come in many other ways. One of the ways I do it is through this podcast of, I just talk. It's not prepared. I come with some bullet points sometimes. My dyslexic brain can struggle if I don't have any pointers, and we'd end up on so many tangents. So I have the title of sometimes we don't even have the title, we just have like a word, which is the topic. And I have some points that we want to go through, and I just talk, right? And I talk from the heart, and I talk from what I know to be true, and it's not really edited. Sometimes we edit out like the doorbell, or if there's something, a bad sound, but it's pretty much a one take in the sense of it's not scripted, and it's certainly not kind of edited into the inch of its life. You've probably just heard my angle crack there. That wasn't on purpose, but great example. That is a great example of being able to just show your skill set and your expertise. Because I don't need to then come and talk about all sorts of random crazy statements. And don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se. I just think it's quite a lazy marketing approach. Lazy is not the right word. I don't know, I just think it's a very interesting approach, should we say. And I've had clients who have also done incredible, amazing things, and yet they don't state these quite extreme statements across websites and socials and things like that. And I just want to sometimes say to people, like, do you realise that it really turns people off? Because for me, it turns me off. And like, I'll spend money. I'm like, I'll give you my money if you can help me. But there's certain things when I read, I'm like, yeah, that's not for me. And for me, it's about skill set and about level of understanding and level of expertise and also level of care and love for what they do. And again, I'm not saying that you can't have that by doing all the other things. I'm just saying there is an alternative strategy, and there's many things I do in my business that help people like you listening to this know that I am the person for them, and I'm the person to help them with their business, and I'm the person to advise them on their business growth in many other ways than using X, Y, and Z other strategy. So how do you feel like, since we've had this conversation, I'd love for you to think about, right, yeah, if I'm doing 20 hours a week, that's 10 and a half years, how's that going to go for me? Like, do I want to do this? You can still make money while you do 10 and a half years, but like, do you enjoy it enough to do that? And also the amazingness of, going hard at something. And I think there'll be different types of people listening to this episode, but for some of you who listen, you work your absolute arse off and you get told by various people that you shouldn't be. You get told that it's wrong, that it's bad, that it's hustle this, it's that. Like, I don't promote hustle culture, but I promote working hard. And I really believe there is a difference, right? I slept in till 11 o'clock today. I slept in till 12 o'clock yesterday. My body needs sleep at the moment. It's sleeping. It still means I did a 10-hour day yesterday. It still means I'll probably do... Actually, no, I've got family coming for dinner, so we might only have like an 8-hour day a day. 2 days before, I did 12-hour days, right? Now, I'm not saying that to get the flag out for you to be like, oh, amazing, well done, mate. What I'm saying is, it is okay to work hard. I would argue you've got to work hard. If you're scaling your business, you're going to be working really, really hard. And that's okay. And it's also okay if you listen to this past 10 and 15 minutes and thought, well, do you know what? I just want to go for it and I want to get it done in 5 years, or I want to do it in 4 years and do the 40 hours or do the 50 hours a week. And that's okay. You're allowed to. Listen to what your body says. That everyone's got different parameters on what they can do. And if you're someone who's sat and thinking, right, I've got a chronic illness, I can do like even 10 hours a week is too much for me, that's totally okay. Just think about it. Still 21 years. 21 years is not that long in the grand scheme of life. And I think the more you can lean into this idea of like, right, I'm here for a long time, not just a good time, then you can start to really sit in your business and just think, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to own this. I'm going to own however long it takes, because that is how long it's going to take. And really sitting in that and believing in what you do and becoming the expert in that. And again, when I say expert, I am not saying you have to be the world's number one. In fact, you probably won't be the world's number one. I'm not the world's number one. I don't think I'll ever be. And I'm not sure I actually want to be, because I don't need to be. And that's really important, right? My ego doesn't need it. I don't need it from a financial perspective. I don't need to be any of that. I just need to be really, really good at what I do and know that when people choose to work with me, I'm absolutely incredible at that, which I am. And that brings me huge joy and huge kind of satisfaction. So that is a real interesting one to be in, isn't it? I think we might end up with a two-parter on this, because we're already at 41 minutes. Wowza, I thought this was going to be a really quick 20-minute episode. Moving on. So, doing the groundwork and making the foundation super strong is something that I talk about with clients a lot and is really key. So if you are sitting here thinking, I want to be further ahead, why am I not further ahead? Why have I not made X amount of money? Why have I not got this many clients? Just think about, right, why don't we do some of the groundwork? What can we do in your business foundations to make that really strong and really consistent and robust? And just think about it. And then start putting a plan together in place and think about, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That could be changed. This makes sense, etc., etc. A really simple thing from that is like, listen, if I had 6 clients this week come to you and say, right, I want to start on a retainer for $4,000 a month. Have you got everything in place to be able to do that? The answer might be no. So think about, right, what do I need? Have I got the onboarding? Have I got this done? Have I got this system? Get everything in place. Because if you're trying to like manifest and you're trying to like create these goals and make these results, but you haven't got anything in place to help support you with that, you will struggle. And because you're kind of telling the universe you want something, but then the actual reality in this current reality of what you've got is not really showing that, right? It's not really showing that you're ready for it. So do the groundwork, build the foundations, make that really robust, because that'll make more sense. Now, what I am not saying here, though, is just do that and don't focus on sales and marketing, because that is really not going to wash and it's not going to work. It just really isn't. So don't get really sucked into, like, doing all this stuff behind the scenes and then no one actually knows you exist, because that's when it really won't work. And that's when you're just procrastinating and creating things for the sake of it. I'm talking about for those of you who have probably already got a decent business, but maybe you're going through a slower thing, or you're at 200 grand a year and you want to get to 2 million and it feels like a real slow push. Whilst you're doing your sales and marketing, whilst you're getting all that going, spend the time doing the groundwork to make your foundations really, really strong. I'm now going to end this episode here. Next week, come back and listen to part 2, which we're going to go through. The next point on my list is, have you got a sales problem and what we can do about that? And I think we're going to end it there, because I think that's a good place to end this episode. I know it's long and I appreciate your time's very precious. So come back next week, we'll do part 2, and I've got a whole host of other things to go through for this. But I hope you are well. Thank you for listening. I hope this has given you something to think about and maybe reposition things in your head a little. And I just want to end this on saying to you that you are really doing well. If you're listening to this, if you're engaged, if you've got to the end of this podcast, because most people will have switched off, so by like minute 10, most people will be like, okay, great, I've heard that, now I'm going to move on. If you're still here listening to this, well done. Well done that your attention span is being trained and you're working at it so well that you can listen to a long form piece of content for a long period of time. And also just want you to know that slow growth is sexy and it's okay and it's fine and you're normal. This is the other really important thing. It is totally normal to grow at a consistent rate if that is slow. These like unicorn people that you're seeing, that is not the norm. And I think that's really, really important to kind of mention, because you believe that this huge fast growth is normal. And don't get me wrong, I help people grow really fast. So I'm not against fast growth. I actually love fast growth. And, people come to me and they want to work with me one-on-one. And often I can get them there really damn quickly. It might have taken people like, there's a client I have who, it took them 9 years to get to consistently making 300 grand a year. It took them, I think, 7 years to get to 300 grand a year, and then did 300 grand a year consistently for like 2 years, right? It took them 7 to 9 years, right? 9 years for consistent, but let's say 7 to just actually hit that. That's great. That's fab. And then it took them a year. I then took them from where they were at and then got them and doubled that in less than a year for them. So that's huge, yeah? So you can go from 7 years of it taken to that, to then they reached a point and then they reached out for help and they were like, hey, they were a referral actually. Someone was like, you need to work with me. And I was like, let's go. Let's see what happens. And we made some huge, massive changes. And when I say it took a year, in terms of monthly revenue, it actually took way less than that. So they went from they went from 30 grand a month, they got to 60 grand a month in way less than a year. I'm just being conservative for you to say that, for the whole annual revenue to change to be double, it had to take a decent length of time. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Yeah, so that's really key. I've also had another client who, did, in 7 months of this year, the same revenue they did last year, which is still multiple 6 figures, but it took them years and years to get to that multiple 6-figure point in the first place. And so it's really important that you just acknowledge that things take time. And yes, I can help you grow really fast if you want to, but there is a period, especially at the beginning, where it does take a lot of time and it does take a lot of like graft. And, you know, I'm very lucky that most of the people who do work with me, I can get them, even if they're, you know, in their first 3 years, can get them moving pretty damn quickly, in the sense of, you know, I've had it where people can get to consistent 10 grand in cash a month within like a 6-month period, which is great. Mega, right? That's fab. But it's not something that I choose to use as like the main pull for things, because everybody's different and businesses take different lengths of time and everyone has their own growth journey to go on. And that's the one thing I can't guarantee. Like I can't ever guarantee that it's going to take X amount of time, because I don't know, unless I can see, if I see a business, I've been in a business and I know I've spent like 3 hours, I can probably tell, like I can give them a real rough estimate. Like I can say, right, I think you can do X amount of money in the next X amount of time frame between like 6 and 9 months. And most of the time I'm absolutely bang on. If not, they do way more than that, because I always try and be conservative. But just off the off, I can't really say to someone like, it's going to happen in this time, because I can't, right? Someone comes to me with 300 grand a year business. In a year, we might be able to get to 1 million, might be able to get it to 2 million, but it all just depends. And it depends on so many factors that are out of my control and out of their control. So I think it's a really important conversation to have around growth and speed of growth, of like, sit in the fact that if you are in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're probably doing all right. The fact you're still here is probably great. The fact you're listening to this is great. And like, it doesn't have to happen overnight. But what is fun is once you have got to a certain level, someone like me, i.e. me, I would recommend me. I'm pretty damn good at what I do. Someone like me can come and then make the next part of the scaling so much easier. Now, that's what I'm not saying is it's easy, because it really isn't. And there's some of the problems you come up against. People are like, whoa, like some people are like, it's easier making 10 grand a month than it is making 60 grand a month, which it is, although everyone who's making 10 grand doesn't think that. You know, I can come in and really help to massively, you know, quadruple the size of your business if you want it to at that point. And there's many things I can do that work at that level of business. But in the first few years, it's bloody hard. It's bloody tough. And it can be really, really difficult. And, you know, some of the businesses I work with, I am lucky that they come to me and they've only maybe been in business for like, I don't know, 6 months, and they're already at 20 grand a month, which is lovely. But that's not the norm. But what I would say is when they come to me with that, say they come and they're like, right, 6 months in, manage 20 grand a month consistently, there's often a whole shit show that's going on underneath the surface. Not their fault, not a bad thing necessarily. It's just not great in the terms of the business and their structure and their growth trajectory. But I can help them sort that out, and that's why they come to me, right? That's the whole point of my job, is to help people. But I'm sharing these examples just to say that, like, it's normal. Slow growth is normal. Wanting to be further ahead is so normal. And, you know, the people who you look up to, and maybe the people you're, you know, spending money on to coach with, they also want to be further ahead. Like, I can guarantee you, the people who are making, like, say, if someone's making £1 million a year, they're looking at the person doing 6 million a year and thinking, right, well, why am I not there yet? Or how do I get there quicker? And then the person that's doing 6 million a year is then looking at the person doing 15 mil or 20 mil or even 100 mil a year and being like, whoa, how do I get there? What does the brand need to do? How do I move there? It is a constant normal place to be, and it's never going to go away. I really don't think it does. Sometimes it depends on the person. Like, sometimes it can, but it always comes back and manifests in some way if it's not the kind of most obvious one. So that is the end of this episode. I will speak to you next week, and we will continue on with this conversation, and I will speak to you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Honest Business Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you are subscribed, and if you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others and leave a rating and review. To catch up with all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at may.james_, where I share the raw, uncut, behind-the-scenes reality of what running multiple businesses every day truly looks like. As always, links and any resources that were mentioned in the episode will be in the show notes below. That's all for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time.